Yo, party people in the place to be was good. Welcome to Vibes and Stuff. So we have a episode for you. So we are going to speak about the impact of capitalism. And so capitalism is a wide-ranging, very expansive type topic. So instead of speaking to on it by myself or speaking with it just with the guys, I brought in who I believe is a subject matter expert on what capitalism is and how it affects everyone, not just mainstream, but also people of color, and why it's important to know certain things. Yeah, hey, please listen, Vibesters, please put fire emojis or whatever you do to show love for somebody I consider a friend. Project Nerd HQ. Heck, what's good, bro?
Appreciate you for the invitation, Freezie. We go back some years. You my big my big brother. And I look at you as a mentor figure for me when it comes to navigating um the platforms as a content creator, Freezie. So I appreciate you always. First and foremost, you gave me the opportunity to jump on the next panel, and I'm where I'm at today because of what you gave to me, Freezie. So I just want to throw
Right,
that out before we get into
right,
any conversation for the people that don't know the relationship between you and I.
right. Yeah, we go back like velvet slacks. Yes, sir. You know what
Slacks
I'm
on the
saying?
Cadillac, freeze.
Yes, yes, yeah, yeah. So let me first start by saying this to the audience. So first of all, this voice that I'm in, this is the Vibes and Stuff voice. It's not the Florence Tears yo voice that's on the other channel. So for one, and two, um,
You're very monotone right now.
yeah. There is no one that I would rather have this conversation with because of how it impacts not only myself and yourself, but others. Right. So heck, when we talk about the impact of capitalism, right? For the 9 to 5er, for Joe Blow, do we really understand what capitalism means, or is capitalism a buzz phrase, a buzz term to us that happens to us, and we're not aware situationally how it impacts us?
For the average 9 to 5 or the average Joe, like you said, for me, I grew up constantly working from when I was 12 years old, working at Met Supermarket on Fulton Street in Brooklyn, to working at the animal shelter, different jobs that I've had, worked in restaurants. So when I was younger, I thought I had a clear definition of what capitalism was. I thought it was, hey, this is how I work, free markets, the US dollar, that's how we get by because of capitalism. And as you get older, and if you really want to find out what's the issue of something, you have to truly figure out what's the definition of certain
Right.
things. So when it comes to capitalism, the ism part of it, the ISM that's at the end of it, the ism part is a structure, right? The ism
Right.
always talks about structures, just like racism is a structure. You
Structure.
always
Yep.
got the ISM at the end of it. So when you try to figure out what capitalism is, capitalism, to make it simple, it's just the ownership of the means of society that are privately owned. So what I mean by that is the means in a society for which we operate, they're privately owned by a small percentage of people, not
Right.
the vast majority of people in society, right? So that's
Right.
the difference between capitalism and socialism.
Socialism.
Socialism is an economic theory that's a transitional period between capitalism and communism. You can't just automatically jump into something and be communist. No, you can't. People got
Right.
to understand socialism is a global term also, right? When
Right.
we talk about socialism, you can't have just one country that's socialist. No, that's not how it works, right?
Right.
The one of the tenets of socialism is the international workers unite. We're talking international, which means the globe. We're not talking
Right.
the workers of Ohio unite or the workers of New Jersey unite. No, the international workers unite. So that's the difference between what capitalism, socialism, and what
Not
communism is.
even national auto workers. We're talking about
No,
global, on a
global,
global
because
scale.
what capitalism does is, us here in the States, in the Western part of society, the Western part of the world, the US, Canada, the UK, we get to live peacefully because we take advantage of the global South, the continent of Africa, the continent
Right.
of Asia, South America. We take advantage of those places so we can have our Starbucks 450 venti latte.
Right. 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 Yep. Yep. Done by some lady named Amber in a spot with great Wi-Fi where we can go. And so heck, the irony to this is I don't know if I told you this, and I probably should have told you this before we got on, but while I was
So
thinking about it, so while I was thinking about when it's springing on you, I was like, do I tell Heck? Do I tell him? This is me last week, right? Do I tell Heck that I'm working on like security licenses and working on my CFP package so that I can be that guy to be the guy opposite the table from you in those Wi-Fi places, sipping lattes and things, talking about the futures and things. That's what I'm working on right now. It's one of the reasons why the other channel is not as active as it once. Remember, I used to do Lawrence Tears like 3 times a day. You know what I'm saying?
24/7.
24/7, right? But the older you get, the more you realize that you can't do 3 or 4 things in one time. You got to focus on one, and then you have to focus on the thing that's the most important, right? You have to prioritize. But anyway, the capital
Even the
part of that,
example, I'm sorry, Freezie. Even the example that you brought up, like you're trying to get your security, like you trying to get your security company, that's all fine and dandy
right,
because you would still be a worker in society, right? Because even if
right,
you have your own security company, you are going to be licensed or you are going to be contracted by a third party or by a second party. So that's
right,
different than one of your uncles owning factories and industries like fashion, or your
right,
uncle owning an oil company. That's different, right? So this is what people have to understand. Us Freezy as workers and cods in the machines, we aren't capitalists.
no, we are
People that
not.
control industries are capitalists. Even if you
Yeah,
have money saved up, a 401k, some stocks, you don't own industry. You don't own this apartment building
right,
on my block that determines the rest of the rent for the rest of the neighborhood. You don't own that. So that's what
right,
people have to understand. There's a clear difference of a worker and a capitalist.
right, right, right. And so the thing that boggles my mind, and when we speak about capitalism, is the thought that there is a fair competition, right? What I've learned over the years is when people tell me, because you remember when we were talking about capitalism before the show, the definition, when I was talking to you about the Oxford, the abridged, the Merriam-Webster version of what capitalism is versus how we see capitalism and how it impacts us daily.
With Evergreen too much with these abridged terms. You hanging out with Evergreen too much.
No, no, oh no, oh no, no, I'm not. Evergreen G,
Shout out
that's
my
my
guy
dog.
Evergreen.
I,
Shout,
I
shout
love
out
him, bro.
Evergreen.
But that's a bridge too far for me, right? You know what I'm saying? But my thing is, and that's just me, my take on stuff, not his take on stuff. I value his opinion also, right?
I was just
But
making a joke. Yeah, shout out
yeah,
to Evergreen.
yeah, man, yeah, no, no doubt, no doubt. Bro, if we can't make jokes, bro, I mean, what's life without joke? What's life without
I
laughs,
just
bro?
want people in the chat that's watching. That wasn't a stab at Evergreen. That's my dog.
Yeah, that's our guy. Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
our guy.
But what I learned in life is capitalism is not fair competition, like what you mentioned. You know what I mean? Like some of us, give you an example. A dude I know named Vic, bro. He has master's degrees in business, right? He has the PMPs, right? He's got all the security licenses. Well, not all of them. That's ridiculous, but he's got securities license. so that he can be a stockbroker and all these type of things. Like he's got all these different things, right? And he works as hard as any man I know, right? Dude named Vic, just a regular cat, right? He works as hard as anybody I know, but he can't seem to get ahead of the wave. Like 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 some people can get on the crest of that wave and ride that wave to $1 million homes, and investment properties and all these things. But I'm not sure if it's because he is doing something wrong or if the capitalist society is not built for him, right?
Because one, I don't know his financial situation, so I don't know what debt he owes and stuff like that. But when it comes to this concept of the American dream, it's a
Yeah,
fallacy for most of us, right?
right,
Because
right,
like you, Freezy, you're just a bit older than me, right? But you come from a generation, you obviously being a black man in America, you come from a generation where your parents had to deal with redlining, which
right,
mean they couldn't buy certain property in certain areas, which made it harder for them to pass down generational wealth to you, and which
right,
made it harder for you to pass down generational wealth to those that came after you. Now,
right.
is it impossible for you to do it? No, right?
No,
Because you work your ass off, you could do it. When we're talking about this issue, right? If I'm having a conversation about the systems that's in place, you have to bring up redlining. You have to bring up the fact that the biggest boom in the United States was because of the New Deal that FDR put in place, which made it easier for a lot of people to to buy houses, to buy land. But at the same time, you also have to put in there that even though FDR was great, those policy was great, those policies were shut closed on black and brown individuals. Indigenous communities couldn't get access to those policies. Queer people couldn't get access to those policies. So even though as great as president he was, or the policies he was put in place, a lot of those policies people couldn't get them because they were either disenfranchised, a person of color, indigenous, or they were queer, right? And that's a lot of the issue that you have. If we're going to have the conversation, you have to bring that up. You can't bring that up without having that little bit that I brought into there.
no, you can't.
Mm-hmm.
Because for one, segregation on any level is an unfair practice, right? But at the same time, knowing that, right, it doesn't change the fact that a lot of these things happen historically, whereas those that were discriminated against, because like my people, right, my family, they were discriminated against, right? But the discrimination part is not um the anchor, so to speak. The anchor is that others that excuse me grew up at the in the same time, came from the same type of family income structure, you know what I'm saying, came from the same educational opportunities. Like a lot of our grandfathers and stuff, they didn't finish school, man. A lot of our grandfathers, bro, they, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm just gonna use an example. When I say
But
white
what
guy,
was the
everybody
reason? But what was the reason they weren't able to finish school,
I'm
Freezy?
going
I'm,
to
I'm so I'm
yeah,
sorry to cut you off. Go ahead. My apologies. Go ahead.
I'm going to get to that. So the reason why is because it's twofold, right? It's a twofold thing: discrimination, and then there's this thing called credit, right? And what people don't understand back then, credit wasn't as complicated as it is now, though it still is a discriminatory practice today, right? But and two, the black and white and natives had a discrimination issue going on back then, but the main anchor is not the practice that held them in place. Say 1937, they're like, oh, 1937, you just figure it out, or 1927, you just figure out a way around it. What happened is other race, basically whites, got a 80-year head start in these practices, right? So every day that we live today, everybody that was discriminated back then, they are slowly getting better and catching up, right? But when others have an 80-year head start, any practice is not going to be fair. And even the redlining and the credit issues, because if my family was white, then white, if I had come from a white family, and I know this is not this sounds like it's not fair to white people. I'm not judging white people, bro. I'm not a racist. What I'm saying is in 1900, my family couldn't buy houses in certain areas, and they weren't getting paid the same wage. So even if a black man and a white man was 20 years old with two kids, they worked basically even, right? The white guy was getting propelled forward. He had wind beneath his wings, kind of welcoming into a club. Whereas others, not only did they not get wind beneath their wings, the wind blew them backwards, right? So then once we stop the wind from blowing them backwards, now they're way up there and we are way back here. And even if we perform at the same pace, just work hard, the gap between us is so huge that we're just now embracing the concept of generational wealth, right? Like, heck, for instance, I'll give you an example. I'm in sales, right? So I used to do sales products. I used to sell life insurance, right? And so what I used to tell black families is, hey, you're gonna die one day, right? You're gonna die one day. And their whole thing is, what you mean I'm gonna die one day? Bruh, listen, trust me, the day is gonna come for everyone. Man, even Jesus died, bro. Come on. Everybody is it's gonna happen, right? So the thing you might want to consider is instead of drinking two Pepsi Colas a day, right? Drink one Pepsi Cola a day, put the rest in life insurance so that you can overcome that obstacle that was set in place by a system that was kind of holding you back, pushing you back. And what I got from a lot of black families is, hey, Uncle Freezie, I hear you, but I like Pepsi. And I don't care when I'm dead in the ground, I don't care if they drink Pepsi or not. So they missed the whole thing on generational wealth. Like, say back then, if you just didn't drink one Pepsi, cut back one Pepsi, and say in 1960, you left your family $100,000 in life insurance. That's a huge amount of money. That's Mickey Man. Mickey Mantle, I don't even think was making that type of money. But when you have insurance, you can leave that in a lump. You can pay off all your family's debts, not leave debt, and then you can pay for your kids' education, all these things. And then now, by the time they're ready to have a baby in the 80s, say, because right now it's 2023. So now by the time that 63-year-old that got that money that went to college because somebody left them life insurance in the 60s, now the one that is having babies, say they're having an Uncle Freezie and a Project Nerd HQ in 1980, right? Now those two babies are born into the family of someone that went to college, right? And understands the impact of generational wealth. So instead of us, say, having to work at the pet store from 6 in the afternoon to 11 at night cleaning the pet store, now we value education and we saw what our parents did. And now we are on that road to correcting the things the system didn't have in place for us. I can't get us to do that though, bro. And the reason why is because we were taught a certain thing. It's tough for us to unlearn it. It's because people capitalized on us.
For us to unlearn certain things, especially if we never learn where we're from, right? If we don't know
Right.
the history of where we're from, we're doomed to repeat the same mistakes from our ancestors. And I should rephrase what I said instead of mistake by our ancestors, because they weren't mistakes. Our ancestors, they were how can I use this? They were taken advantage of, right? That's
Right.
the better word to use instead of mistakes. Because my family is from Puerto Rico. My family is indigenous to the island. My
Right.
family, I do have Taino in my bloodline. But when you look at it, right, I'm gonna just use Puerto Rico for an example, right? And you and I,
Okay.
we've been messaging back and forth about like the Caribbean, about like Latin, when it comes to Puerto Rico, for instance, right? As soon as Puerto Rico was able to get their independence from Spain at the end of the 18th century, going into the 19th, or the end of the 19th
19th
century, going
century.
into the 20th century, the
Right.
U.S. came and said, "This is our land," right? So Puerto Rico literally probably had less than 24 hours of its own sovereignty before the
Right.
United States came and claimed that land. So what happened was they made it illegal for us to practice any of our indigenous practices, right? When you look at the English language, a lot of the words that are in the English language comes from Taino words. The
Really?
word,
Like what? Can you give us an example?
I'll give you a few. Barbecue, barbacoa, that's an indigenous word, right? When you look
Really?
at, hammocks, hamacas, those are indigenous words. So a lot of the
Okay.
practices, like my ancestors, they were barbecue, and that was a communal thing for people to get together and eat. The
Right.
Europeans saw that and they wanted to make their own version, if not take that. So a
Right.
lot of the things that we do nowadays is just practices that were stolen from indigenous tribes and communities that were around, right? So let me get back to when we talk about capitalism, right? Because Puerto Rico is a very unique place. When you look at the politics of Puerto Rico or Hawaii, for instance, right? Puerto Rico, they can't control their finances, right?
Right.
On Wall Street, there is a financial firm called La Junta that the United States put in place under Barack Obama that controls all of Puerto Rico's finances, right? So what they did was they started peeling back at public education, public infrastructure, and they started privatizing a lot of the stuff on the island. In Puerto
Okay.
Rico, there's something called the Jones Act, right? What the Jones Act is, if you live in Puerto Rico, Freezie, if you own a business in Puerto Rico, Freezie, you want to import stuff from Canada, right? Because of the Jones Act, what you will have to do is you will have to import it to Florida, pay for the shipping cost in Florida, and then import it into Puerto Rico, right? Because of the Jones Act, the only ships that can go into Puerto Rico are ships that fly the U.S. flag. Canadian
Okay.
ships can't go to Puerto Rico to drop off supplies. The UK ships can't go to Puerto. It all has to go through the United States and Florida. It
Okay.
makes the items on Puerto Rico 10 times more expensive than they are on the mainland US.
Oh,
Puerto
wow.
Rico, if it was to become a state right now, it would be the highest tax state in the union, right?
Right.
Puerto Rico, it gets $15 billion, $15 to $16 billion a year from the US for federal aid, which is good. But
Right.
at the
Right.
same time, Puerto Rico is paying $30 billion in taxes. So
Right.
if we're paying $30 billion in taxes every year, but we're only getting 15 billion back for federal aid, how is that evening out?
It's not equitable. No.
It's not equitable, right? So
Right.
you take that small frame what I work and use that on the global south, right? When you look at the continent of Africa, there's
Africa.
countries in Africa that have to trade with France because of certain
Right.
laws and sanctions that are put in place. But what happens is those countries that are under the French flag, they have to go off of the French dollar.
Right.
The French don't even go off of the French
It
dollar.
doesn't even exist no
They
more,
go
right?
off for the euro. Yeah, they go off for
Right.
the euro.
Yeah.
So what
Yeah.
happens is if you're living in one of these countries that have to go off for the French dollar, you can't save up money to move because your money is worthless outside of the colony that you're in.
Right. Right.
Every country, the UK, Sweden, Amsterdam, all the same. They fall under the same concept of destabilizing the global south and taking all of its resources for themselves.
Right. And most of these countries that you're mentioning, they don't have natural resources in abundance, so they have to do this for those countries that do have natural resources in abundance. Things like
Before the
natural gas.
Europeans, before I'm sorry, Freezer, to cut you off, but before the Europeans decided to start looking around the world, the reason why they did that is because they just had the Black Plague. They ran through all of their resources. The
Right.
agricultural revolution, when it came to farming, destroyed all of their crops. It wasn't until they got to Turtle Island that the indigenous people had to tell them, listen, you can't have cows next to chickens because that's how people get fucking sick.
That's how people get sick. Right. And there's I saw a story about that, about the Moors talking to talking to Euros about having chambers, right? Having certain chambers in their houses, like where you sleep and where you eat shouldn't be the same place, and where you all these different, all these different type of things. I'm not for sure.
With all of that, right? All of that is to say this, even from back then, the economic system that divvied up resources, it was feudalism, right? Feudalism, you had the lord and you had the serfs that lived under the lord. Nowadays, that transferred from feudalism into slave capitalism,
Right.
right? And this is the thing that people don't talk about. Slavery in the United States, they always bring up, oh, Egyptians had slaves, or these people had slaves, those people had slaves. The unique thing that was unique to the slavery that was going on in the United States, it was chattel slavery. The
Right.
U.S. was the only place that chattel slavery was happening. They were breeding people. Once a young girl had her first period at 12 or 13 years old, they would take that girl and put her in a fucking stable like a horse to breed with grown-ass men.
Right. Right.
That's what was happening. And that's when we talk about the history of the United States, or the stains of the United States, that's the one thing that they refuse to talk about. They don't talk about the breeding plantations. They talk about the labor plantations, the cotton fields, the sugar. They never talk about the breeding plantations that was going on.
Right. 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 And no doubt. No doubt. And part of that too is logistics. Like when I read about it, it's just to me, and I'm not justifying anything, but the breeding system, then it just made more sense to have a breeding system as opposed to buying and insuring boats, paying sailors, all these things, traveling across the world,
right? And it's trying to get the most profit. It's
bang for the buck.
capitalism, right? It's
Bang for the
more
buck, yeah.
profitable for you to breed people instead of going to another continent and paying for people.
Right.
Capitalism is all about maximizing profit. And how do you maximize profit back then? Not by spending all that money sending a ship across continents. It's by doing it yourself. It's all a product of capitalism.
Right. And part of capitalism is mitigating risk, like doing away with risk, because certain things are risk. Like for instance, what's the word I'm looking for? Having families, the way you make families is generally what happens is, and I'm not a big fan of or let me say it in a way that makes sense to my position. Normally what would happen is people in a same area, same village, same tribe, something like that, will see somebody outside of their family that they like, and they would want to marry them or get it on with them. You know what I'm saying? This is the person that I want to have a baby with, make babies with, right? But then when you strip that away, I'll use my background for an example. I'm Nigerian, right? So my thing is what I gather is people in Nigeria, the different sections of Nigeria, and Nigeria was exploited bad. But anyway, people in Nigeria, what they would do is, hey man, they walking down the road, see somebody that look good. Hey girl, you look good. How about we get it on? You know what I'm saying? And then you start your little family. But the breeding thing, right? The breeding thing is you just take that girl like you mentioned, and you just put them in. You just take one. You would take an excellent looking athlete, right? Whoever the excellent looking athlete is, whoever the hard worker is, and you like, hey man, this guy right here, he'll be the only thing better than him is to have 100 of him, and so they just put him in a station and just have him all day long, just march women into him so that he can get them, so he can knock them up, so that they can create more of him, right? And while it sounds disgusting on the surface, it is disgusting. It is when you think about when you think about that thing, the way it's done, it's offensive. It's disgusted. We should be disgusted by it. Certain things, but it was at that time. That's how they took advantage of reproducing, creating a factory for them, right? Yeah, 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 man. It's
Wise
yeah,
in the chat. Freezie, I thought you was Haitian.
hey. I love wise. I thought my dumb drunk ass uncle told us we was Haitian. I used to say 1805 all the time, and then I come to find out we Nigerian. I am. I think we are 40% Nigerian and 20%. Uh, what do you call people from Wales? Welsh. Welsh. Okay, so is that is 40% Nigerian, 20% uh the Diplomatic Republic of the Congo, and 20% from Wales. So yeah, man.
Like for indigenous communities and stuff, one thing that we don't go off of, we don't go off of blood quantum, right? What we do ask is if some, you had that lady Elizabeth Warren that was saying that she was 0.5 Cherokee Indian. That's stupid right there, right? So
Right.
when it comes to indigenous community, blood quantum is not something that we technically go off of because blood quantum is how they separated a lot of us, especially with the residential schools that was around in the U.S. back then. So,
Right.
when it comes to blood quantum, it's a tricky subject and a tricky conversation.
Right. Right. Oh, very tricky. Very tricky, right? But for people like myself, heck, when you ask me like you asked me this like 2 years ago, and I told you I didn't know, right? All right. When you like, hey man, you black? Yeah, I'm black, but I don't know where from. I hear a lot of people talking like a lot of people are first. A lot of people that I've encountered on the internet are first generation, um, um, Caribbean American, right?
That's me. I'm first generation Puerto Rican. It wasn't until like last year, my mother came to realize that I was asking her stories about my grandfather, her father, just so I get more knowledge of like my family and doing my family tree. It wasn't
Right.
until last year my mother realized that as a child, she was working on the sugar plantations in Puerto Rico with my grandfather. My
Right.
grandfather used to he was a sharecropper on the
Right.
island working on the sugar cane. And my mother used to go with him as a child to work with him.
Right. Right. I used to do that too, man. Yeah, I used to do that too. I used to as a 5-year old. I guess this is around early 70s. We used to go pick blackberries. Right.
That was
Go.
busted last year. You're in South Carolina, right? You're in the
I'm in South
Carolinas,
Carolina.
right?
Yeah, I'm in South
Yeah,
Carolina.
there was a labor ring that was busted in South Carolina where they had migrant workers working as slaves on a farm,
Yeah.
picking berries, picking cherries.
Yeah. 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 That used to happen in the 90s. A dude used to bring a truck around and grab people so they can go pick cotton out the field. So you can go pick cotton, he'll pay you under the table. You know what I'm saying? You can go make about $100 a day or something like that, man. If he was good, if he was not so good, you could probably make about $40 a day. You know what I'm saying? But
I want to ask you, Freezy, right? Getting back on the topic of like capitalism and stuff, right? And maximizing profit. How do you feel about prison labor? How do you feel about prison labor? Because I view prison labor as another form of slavery in 2023.
well, it is a form of slavery. It's
Yeah,
written in the law. It's not
in
hidden.
the Constitution. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
So
hidden.
that's why I wanted to ask you what's your, because I don't think slave labor is justified no matter what someone did. So what's
Right.
your thoughts on the whole idea of somebody getting arrested, going to jail, but then have to work under slave conditions when it comes to producing items for like a manufacturing company or for like Johnson and Johnson or for the
Johnson.
military?
Um, my thing with that is twofold. Right. Right. I don't believe that you should have a work employee relationship even close to anything of slavery. At the same time, right, people are captive for a reason. I'm not saying that everybody that goes to jail is a bad person or goes to prison is a bad person. I'm not saying that the socioeconomic conditions out on the street don't force people to commit crimes because they do, right? What I'm getting at is if you're a part of that, I believe. Listen, man, I know everybody's not religious, right? But one of the first things, and so I am. So one of the first things that God said to man was work, right? One of the first things Adam did was started working. He started naming animals and all these things and doing these things out in the field. That's one of the first things man did, right? Go to work. A man is designed to internally designed for multiple things. A, be communal, right? B, work. C, have dominion, right? And the thing is, the dominion part is the part that's tricky, right? Because when man when dominion is established as a natural thing, there are always going to be one group of people that feels like they are better and have dominion over others. It's what it is. It's why the European countries used to fight each other before they expanded and started fighting others, right? Dominion it goes all the way back to the Franks and the Saxons and the Brits and all of them, right? They used to fight each other first, and then they expanded the beef, and even in Asia, right? Um, um, and the irony is the African countries, for the most part, I mean, there are some wars because of dominion. Once people got in their mind that one is better than many, then you started getting these things in Africa, like these kings that feel like, whatever. But on and how that relates to our capitalism, and I'm sorry for straying, bro. I'm trying to stay on topic. But man, this thing is. Remember in the beginning when we said this thing is far-reaching and expansive, and the tentacles
And
of it.
it got different layers to it, right? And you bring up religion, right? And bring up the church from back then.
Right, right.
They use religion, and even still to this day, religion is used as an excuse to gain profits, right?
Tool.
You
Yep,
talk
it's a
you
tool.
It was a tool to gain profits. It's a tool of capitalism, just like patriarchy is a tool of capitalism also. When
Right,
you brought up those wars that there was happening back, it was wars for territory, land,
right, right,
resources,
right,
gold. The
right,
the 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 Crusades was all about the Roman Catholic Church trying to gather up all the gold that's possible.
right,
Then, when
right.
they ran out of gold in Europe, they decided to go to the Caribbean, and where Columbus landed first was Haiti and Kishkikau, which is now considered the Dominican
Dominican
Republic.
Republic.
That's
Yeah.
where that's where he landed. That's where he landed. He landed on the island of Kishkikau, which is now DR in Haiti. That's what
Right.
people don't understand. He didn't land in the Americas as we know it today, the
Nah.
United States. No, he landed on Kishkikau, which is the Dominican Republic in Haiti, and then made his way to Puerto Rico and then to Cuba before even touching the continental United States.
Right. Right. That's one of the biggest travesties in human history, bro. Haiti. Haiti. Every time I hear about the story of Haiti, bro, I just want to cry, bro. Just want to cry my eyes out, bro.
And this is what people don't understand. Haiti is in the situation it's in right now because of the US and because of Europe. The reason
Right.
why Haiti is in the condition it's in is because Haiti joined an international bank. The only reason they was able to join the international bank is because they got rid of union laws, they got rid of labor laws. So
Yeah.
the US and European Western countries were able to go into Haiti. And if you look at your t-shirts, a lot of the textiles that come out of Haiti come to the US and to Canada and to Europe.
Right. Right. Yet the people, man, when you look at the map, the what do you call it? The topography. It's the topography of the island.
Topographical map.
Yeah, when you look at it, bro, you see a clear line where the DR starts and where Haiti stops. And you can look, and one side of the map is green and lush, and the other side of the map is stripped down and barren. Right?
Accident, that's on purpose. That's on purpose, Freezie.
Yes, on purpose. Yes.
When you look at the Dominican Republic, you look at their flag, right? And I don't want to speak out of pocket. I'm not Dominican, like I said, I'm Puerto Rican. So if anyone who's watching this that's Dominican, I do apologize if you think that I'm talking out of
And add
pocket.
something to the conversation. Add something to the conversation.
Yeah, put it in the chat. But when you look at that flag of the Dominican Republic, it is the only flag in that area that has the Catholic cross in the middle of it. It was the first flag to put the Catholic cross in the middle of it because they wanted to be as close to Europe as possible.
Yeah.
Right now, there's laws put in place in DR. Freezie, if you lived in the Dominican Republic, if you had family that had Haitian ancestry, even though you lived on the side of the island that's the Dominican Republic, you lose your citizenship and you get shipped back to Haiti.
To Haiti, even though
no matter how long you lived where you lived at.
Right.
And again, I apologize to anyone that's Dominican that may feel like I may be talking out of pocket or talking out of place. I do not like to speak on issues that don't affect me directly, but indirectly, being Puerto Rican and being in the Caribbean, it is a topic that comes up.
Right. And on top of that, capitalism is a universal topic, like we mentioned at the beginning of the show. So even when we talk about one tentacle of capitalism, it affects everybody on a international scale, right? It's like what Hex said: the transition between capitalism and communism is socialism, right? It's one of these things, right, where some of these things, they are so far-reaching that we have to have the conversation about these topics, because for one, a lot of these topics go undiscovered, right? Like our kids, they're like 7. Or like my kids are not 7. I'm saying this. My kids are like 30. Them old jokers, bro. They out here. But anyway, like say if your kids are like 7, 8, 9 years old, you're not gonna learn about these type of things, right? You're gonna learn about stuff like social media presence and heck, what's the word I'm looking for? We are influencers. Like you'll learn how to be an influencer, right? You'll learn how to be an influencer before you learn about the people you influence, right? Like you'll learn how to have a social media presence. Like you graduate from high school now, you might have like 1,000 followers, right? But then what you
economic tools that we need, Freezie, in high school. Go ahead.
Yeah.
They don't teach us how to open up a bank. They don't teach us about credit. And you got to look at it like everything that you bring up credit score, right? Credit score was something that was implemented in the 70s when we went off of gold, because we realized gold. And this is why we went off of gold. And people keep talking about buy gold, buy gold. The only people that are telling you to buy gold are people that got stocks in gold right now, right? So the reason why we transitioned from gold into the commerce that we have right now is because gold is a finite resource. You could run out of gold. Right. So that's why they decided to start printing money and start going off of the fact that the US dollar is not powered by gold. It's powered by the strength of the US military. That's why the United States is the only country in the world that has a military base in every country that they have allies with. The US is the only country that does that. So that's what backs up the US dollar, the fact that the US military is so big. Right. So when credit was implemented, it was a response to what happened in the Great Depression. What happened when we decided to give workers' rights and people were able to start buying houses. What happened was in the 70s, we created a generation going forward of people buying into debt and having debt for the rest of their life. I have a friend, Freezie, that his family is very well off, right? He lives in Midtown Manhattan. He has a condo on like 50th Street. So he's well off, right?
He lives in Midtown?
He lives in Midtown, right? But he was telling me a story that growing up, he used to go to Hialeah, Miami, very poor Cuban area, and how his family members in Hialeah, they were always out. They was always doing barbecues, always having people over, cooking and stuff like that. But his other family members that were working and trying to bust their ass to survive were always just paying off a bill. Everything was, you know what, next year we'll be able to take that vacation because this credit card will be paid off by then. You got people that are retired NYPD police officers that have to work at Target because they have debt. Even though they have a pension, they still need that extra money to pay off a credit card. That still happens right now. Americans, we are literally 550. We are a $550 bill away from being broke.
Right. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that if you get hit with an emergency bill for your car of $1,000, you may not have that $1,000 to get back on the road to go to work.
Right. Right. That's by design. That's by design. Right. And so the design of it, and I say this, I don't want to sound like a racist, but I do think this is true though. I think the American dream has a lot of folks shackled. And the reason why I say that is this: the thought of certain things versus the value of certain things are always going to be different, right? The way that Warren Buffett lives and the way that I live are two different things, even though in theory we do the same thing. He's just the goat at it, and I'm not the goat at it, right? The thing I'm getting at ultimately is when you tell an American, be proud of America, be proud, be proud to be an American. I think some guy even wrote a song about that, right? And in your Americanness, in order to be an American, you have to have a house, a car, a family, a wife, and you should be able to ride your lawnmower, and you should be able to take your family vacation for those 10 days once a year. The thing about the American dream though is nobody explains to you how to get there.
Yeah.
Right. And so for me, now that I'm in my 50s, I realized I was living the American dream in my 20s. I'm a veteran. I'm an Army veteran, right? I'm a college graduate. I work for every big bank you ever heard of in the United States, whatever they're named now, whatever they were named in the 90s and the 2000s. I used to work for. And the only major bank I didn't work for is Citi. I never worked for Citi, even though I sold insurance for. Well, I guess I did. I guess I did work for. I was an insurance agent for Citi one time.
Yeah.
So, but my thing is with the American dream, like we're sold this thing of when you said credit, I want to rephrase it and say, and I'm going to rephrase my portion of it and call it debt, right? So we're sold this dream of debt, right? And what happens is nobody looks at the debt part; they look at the tangible part, right? Say in the 1980s, you bought a house that was worth $100,000. That is impressive because now that house is probably worth $650,000, right? Nobody explained to you that mortgage that you was gonna get, that mortgage, that money, that $100,000 that you agreed to pay to that financial institution with a third party trustee, right? Nobody told you at the time that you were gonna pay 4 times the face value of that property, right? So you legit are gonna pay about 4 times that amount. So the bank is gonna tell you, the financial, yeah, yeah, we'll let you have it, man. Golly. Okay, all right. Dang, you twisted my arm. We'll let you get it, right? But in this thick stuff of paperwork, in that paperwork, it's going to be a place that says, hey, this is your amortization schedule, and this is what you're going to pay on payment 1 through payment 360. And what happens in payment 1, you're paying all that money back to the bank, right? You don't get that thing doesn't split and become equitable until about payment 180, right? The bank gets paid their money up front for making the investment, right? And then that's the interest part, and then you start paying down the principal on the back half. What happened to you is you were capitalized upon by a financial institution that is owned by a certain group of people that take their fiduciary stance on having a guy like Uncle Freezie believe in the American dream. Right?
That you forgot to put in there, right? What's the one thing that bank run off of? What is the one thing?
I don't know. Tell me. Say it again.
Bank cares about.
Your mic went out when you were talking. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Every time you say it,
bank's account, all that bank worries about is profits, Freezie.
Because
you can have the same system set up, right? The same. You want to go to the bank, you want to take out money so you get approved to own a house. Why can't credit unions do the same thing like multi-international banking institutions? You know why credit unions can't do it? Because credit unions don't run off of profit. Right. Credit unions are banks that are put in place for the people, by the people. Credit unions, they do not have a board of trustees like Bank of America has a board of trustees. Right.
And CEOs.
And CEOs. That's why credit unions are only in local neighborhoods. You're not gonna if you open up a bank for a bank account with a credit union, you got to go to that same credit union. You can't go to Queens to the credit union in Queens and take out money. No, you got to go to yours in Brooklyn. And those were laws and regulations put in place by the government because the government is lobbied by who? Capitalists that care about one thing and one thing only: profits. That's all they give a fuck about. Freezie is just profits. So they try to bend and break us to their will so they can get all of the profits and keep us perpetually in debt. You bring up Warren Buffett, right? Warren Buffett, perfect example, right? Do you know that Warren Buffett's secretary, she pays more in taxes out of her annual income than he pays out of his annual income?
Yep.
Why is it, people keep talking, oh, Social Security is going to go into solve and it's going to disappear. We can't keep going on with Social Security. Do you know when they stop taxing people Social Security, what income bracket they stop taxing for Social Security money?
No, I don't know.
Every dollar over $100,000 is tax-free. You don't get taxed for Social Security. So they only tax income that's before 100,000. After 100,000, they're not taxing it. You want to save Social Security? Remove that cap. So millionaires, their income is taxed for Social Security.
Right. Wow.
Why? Because if you want change, you cannot leave it up to the people that are going to be hurt the most when changes are arrived. Look at public school, right? Public school is the perfect example, right? I think we should get rid of this idea that property taxes is what funds public school, right?
Okay.
I'm gonna tell you why. We need to fund public school all the same across the board. But why they won't do that, Freezie? Because if you live in a nice neighborhood, that you own a house, you're gonna lose value in your house because now you don't have to pay that extra 200, 300,000 to buy a house because you live in a nice school district. If public schools are all funded the same, that your public school district now it's not the number one because every other school district is funded.
Right.
So if public school was to be funded across the board, people's value of their houses will decrease.
Hey, see
that $100,000, that $500,000, that $1.5 million house is now going to be worth $800,000.
Right. And that's part of the American dream. You're being sold a certain thing. right? You're being sold that this property is going to be at a certain value because think about this. Think about this. When it comes to equity and a bunch of different things, most people never tap into the equity of their property, right? And the reason why is because for some, getting out of debt is a real thing. For others, living in debt is a real thing for them, right? Some people are okay with paying bills, right? And you're like, you're gonna pay bills for the rest of your life on something. It may as well be this house, right? But the point that I'm getting at though is if you ever say that the federal government should fund public schools, people are going to start the communism conversation, right? Like I feel like my personal belief is that public works should be funded by the federal government, right? And people are going to say and I hear it all the time. Oh, you believe in socialism, and I'm like, I believe in things being equitable, right? Like to me, the fact that cops have to work second jobs only means that a guy like myself, a 6'5" black man, and look at man, I'm huge. I'm a huge human being, right? Like the 6'5", like 343. And listen, and I got a hoodie on, bro. When I go in the grocery store with a hoodie on, bro, you know what people see? They're intimidated. And so when people are intimidated, you know what they like to do? They like to feel safe. And you know what people like to do when they feel safe? They like to depend on the cops, right? Right. And then the cop comes, bro, I talk to cops all the time. I talk to them all the time. Some of my homeboys, right? Well, a couple of them retired now, but when I talk to police officers, bro, these dudes are in the same situation as us. Heck, they got little kids going to school, balancing that situation where you said where if something happens and they live check to check, that's them, bro. That's them. You know what I'm saying? So then now when these guys pull over drug dealers, say they pull over a drug dealer and the drug dealer has say $80,000 on them, right? But this dude only makes I'm talking about down south. This dude makes 45,000. And this dude just busted a guy that has on him 4 times his annual salary in a duffel bag, right? And you ask this guy to act with integrity, right? But his wife is a school teacher and she don't make no money. And say the alternator went out in her car. And now you got this guy that's an innocent guy to take $200,000 to the police station. You know what I'm saying? And cash, nobody will ever trace it, right? But if that guy ever one time slips up to temptation and just takes some money out of that bag and just reports a lesser amount for the rest of his life, he has to deal with somebody may have seen it. When we go to court, the druggie guy is going to be like, yo, I had 80,000 in there. And when y'all took it to court, man, you said it was only 55,000 in there. You know what I'm saying?
When you bring up policing, right? Public schooling being funded publicly, and people may tell you that's communism or whatever. But I'm actually Freezie, how are the police funded? How are the police funded? Through
Locally.
tax dollars, right?
Yeah,
Federally and
locally.
locally. Okay. How is the fire department funded?
Locally. And
Federally and
a lot of
locally.
them are volunteer.
Yeah, which is bullshit. They should all be getting paid a
They
salary,
should be
which
getting
is what
paid,
I'm saying.
yeah.
How is the post office funded? The United
Federally.
States Post Office, federally, right?
Federally, yeah.
And some local money goes into it also. But when you look at those entities that I just brought up, those are all publicly funded entities
Public
that do
works.
one
Right.
thing, that hire people, right? Do
Right.
you know what is the number one hire for Black Americans in the United States when it comes to employment and union joining the union force? Do you know
I'm gonna
what
say the post office.
the United States Postal Service?
Yep.
The United States Postal Service
Yeah. Yeah.
is the number one hire for African Americans and is the number one forcer for joining unions for African Americans is the United States Postal Service. Do you know what private industry is trying to get rid of? The
The
Post
post
Service.
office. Yep.
Now, I'm going to ask you this, Freezie. If somebody lives in rural Kentucky, right, the Post Service, they go to rural Kentucky to drop off your mail because that's your right as a citizen to have your mail being brought to you. Now, remove the United States Postal Service there, and it's only Amazon. You think Amazon's going to go to the middle of fucking Kentucky, rural Kentucky, to drop
Every
off a
day,
package?
run a route.
They
The
already don't do that. They drop it off to the post office, and the post office have to pick up the rest of the bill.
Right. Right.
They already don't do it. So they're trying to get rid of, they're always trying to privatize the market because it makes a scarcity for jobs. What
Right.
drives an economy is unemployment and is GDP, right?
Right.
If you have a high unemployment rate,
Top end
and
and bottom, man. You're talking about top and bottom. Top and bottom. As long as you have top and bottom, bro, you can have everybody else in the middle. Right?
wages are at or what it is right now, it's because we have an unemployment population, right? Freezy, if me and you, we try to bargain with our employer for more wages, what's going to happen? They could fire us and just hire somebody from the
Without
street.
cause. Yeah, they can say without cause. They're like, yeah,
We're
go
not
ahead.
in a union. I'm not unionized working at Target. I'm just a worker. I work in New York City. That is an at-will employment state, which means that they can fire me for whatever reason.
Right. Right. Yeah.
One thing people got. I advocate for workers being able to own the means of productions in whatever industry they work for. I
Yeah.
advocate for everyone to have an equitable starting point for wherever they were born. The only difference between me, you, Freezy, and some people from South America is our spawn point was in the United States.
States.
That's the only difference. Where
That's
our
the only
spawn point
difference.
was. That's
Right.
the only difference right now, right? But at the
Right.
same time, we understand that capitalism, not only does it affect us living in the empire that is the United States, it affects them living in the third world market that gets taken advantage of.
Right. Right. And yeah. Yeah. And you know the thing about it is the thing about it is this. The reason why I brought up Vic, right, is because a lot of times people will see Vic, they'll see, you know what I'm saying, two well-dressed minority males, career oriented, like we'll have like high level conversation. But like for instance, Uncle Freezie is just not I know more stuff than Tom Thibodeau's rotations. Trust me, right? So
I bet Ali Wise in the chat knows more than Tom Thibodeau in his rotations. My guy Wilson Dang knows more than Tom Thibodeau.
right. And so what happens is like when you see Vic and I, people will see a certain thing, right? Be like, man, they have their stuff together, right? But the thing about it is, there are people that are just as talented as us, or maybe more so, but they don't have the opportunity and the infrastructure in place for them to ascend from the bottom to the top. Like for instance, I'm not gonna say that I'm more talented than everybody that's in Haiti, even though Haiti's in a messed up situation. What I'm saying is our spawn point, like you mentioned, is different. And so I have access to more stuff. And so my ascension, though it's not always vertical, sometimes it's horizontal, but I'm still moving. So, but the thing about it is we're able to use tools at least here. Like I can speak to you about certain stuff, and you can help me get to another place, and you can speak to me about certain stuff, and I can help you get to another place. Right? We can capitalize on each other's knowledge and experiences, right? And outside resources. Like if there's something that you need that I can't provide, but I know a guy, since I'm networked, right? I can find that resource and bring it to you. Others in other opportunities, others in other places,
Mm-hmm.
they don't have these opportunities for them, bro.
That up. That's one of the core tenets of socialism is mutual aid, right?
Right.
When you look at the Black Panthers, for instance, right? How much social movement were the Black Panthers making in the United States? They started food programs for
Right.
kids. The
Right.
reason public schools nowadays they have a breakfast and a lunch program is
Right.
because of the Black
Black
Panthers.
Panthers.
The
Yep.
reason why there's an EBT system when it comes to food stamps, so people can buy milk, so people can buy formula, it's because of the Black Panthers. That's what the Black
Right.
Panthers implemented. If you talk about going to the hospital and having your Bill of Rights as a patient, that's because of the young lords in the Bronx when they took over Lincoln Hospital. That's the only reason people have
Right.
that right as a patient to be seen by a doctor, is because revolutionaries at one point decided to say, fuck that, we need to take control of this system. And what
Right.
happened to every one of those revolutionary leaders? They were all killed.
Killed.
They were
Well,
all, Fred Hampton was shot to
yeah.
death laying in bed next to his pregnant wife at 20 years old.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy.
They made Angela Davis a public enemy number one.
Right.
Afeni Shakur had to flee to Cuba
Right.
because the U.S. was too scared of the power that she had in the country.
Right.
When
Right.
you look at all these other countries that tried to implement socialist policies or socialism, what happened? The Western powers came down like the iron fist that they are.
Right.
Cuba, right? It has a blockade that's on that island ever since the 60s and 80s. Cuba cannot outsource or cannot import any goods from any other country. That's
Right.
why their buildings are the way they are. That's why they still have cars from the 1930s and 1940s, because they can't import anything because the US has trade sanctions on Cuba. Even
Right.
with all of that, even with all those trade sanctions, even with all this Western hostility, Cuba is still the number one country that export more doctors across borders than any other country. Cuba
Wow.
sends more doctors to third world countries than any other country, even with all that Western hostility. People
Wow.
talk about China, right? Now, granted, when it comes to economic practices in China, when it comes to certain labor laws and stuff, some of it
Yeah.
happens in mainland China, but then you have offland China, that's Taiwan. That's a lot of these factories are in Taiwan. They're not in mainland China. Who
Right.
controls Taiwan? The US has a big control of Taiwan. So when you look
Right.
at China, they dramatically extinguish poverty in China. There's no homeless people on the streets in China.
Okay.
Now, you're not going to have the same libertarian freedoms like the US. You can't watch porn, you can't talk freely about the government, but the
Right.
trade-off is ain't no poor people on the street.
Right. Right.
Everybody's educated. Everybody got
Right.
health care. You don't got infant mortality rate being 3 times what it is in the US.
Right. Right. And man, listen, the infant and mother mortality rate for Black women in the United States is ridiculous.
Black women are 3 times more likely to die during childbirth than any other population in the US.
Right. That's ridiculous, and that's based on something I saw from 2020. Right. The 2020, bro. This is not. I'm
Medical
not talking about
racism.
19. I'm not talking about 1940, bro. I'm talking about 2020. This is crazy.
When I went to school to be an EMT, Freezie, you know what I was taught? When you go to the hospital and they put the oxygen meter on your finger to gauge what's your oxygen saturation. You know that thing
Right.
that they put on
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
finger?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I was taught as an EMT, if you're putting that on a Black person or a person that has dark melanated skin,
Right.
whatever percentage it comes out with, 96, 94, whatever, add 4% on top of it, you get their saturation level. Why? Because of medical racism.
Wow.
I was taught as an EMT that the light doesn't go through a Black person's skin like it does a white person. That was what I was taught as an EMT.
Wow.
You
Wow.
got medical students that are being taught that Black women or Black people in general, their pain tolerance is higher than any other race. That's why Black women are most likely to be ignored when they're asking for painkillers when they're in the middle of surgery.
Right. Right. Wow. That's amazing, bro. That's amazing. It's amazing to hear. Like I'm not impressed by it, so to speak. Like that. I'm. It's mind blowing. Um. Um. To the extent that some of these things ago. Right. It's a shame in a way that you get ignored. At the same time, this is my stance is this, bro. Heck, I'm not even gonna lie to you, bro. My stance is this. My stance has always been this, bro. There is
Unite, bro.
power. There is power in togetherness, bro. Right? There's power in people. Right? I think sometimes a lot of us, and I'm just gonna speak about the black community. I listen. I got a lot of brown brothers and sisters, man. I got a lot of brown brothers and sisters, right? My thing is though, in our black communities, we don't fight for the right things enough, right? Knowing this, a lot of black families know have aunties and sisters that passed away during childbirth, but yet we do nothing about it. We cry and we mourn, and then we look at the baby, and then we're like, who's gonna take care of the baby? What about the fact that our loved one passed away over something that they should not have, right? Like there are um things in our black communities, right? Like I was talking to Soul Finger 12. I was talking to Soul Finger 1212 about this maybe about 3 weeks ago. When tax time comes and we get say $7,200 back for income taxes on our income tax return, right? Heck, for me, I don't get $7,200 back, bro. You know how much $7,200? That's, bruh. You can pay for your parking for the whole year with that,
Oh, that's a
right?
fact. Maybe for
Right,
2 years.
right, right. But we get $7,200 back on our tax returns. Heck, you know what we do? We look at that car that's worth $1,800 and put $2,400 rims on it, right? That car that's worth $1,800.
You and I, we've had this conversation before, right? That's not
Yeah,
uniquely exclusive to the black community. And like I always say, I don't want to talk out of pocket
I
to
only, I
you.
only
So if
wanted
I
to, I
ever
only, I only wanted to speak to that because that's the community that I know.
no, I know, but that could be said towards the redneck that lives in North Carolina that gets his tax return, and what he do? He buy himself the Ford F-150 pickup truck that got
Right.
the nice little step right there. There's no difference.
And got the
How
park
much is how much is a shotgun? $200, $300.
$200.
Ain't no difference. Then no redneck going and buying themselves a shotgun or buying themselves a handgun or buying themselves some tobacco so they can spit. Ain't no
Right.
difference.
Right. But the thing about
At
it
least you
though,
could sell that car 2 years later for added value.
yeah, but it depreciated, and those rims depreciate on the spot. But the point that I'm getting at is for certain classes of people, right? If they do that, they still have the wind at their back. With my black community, we have the wind in our face, right? And so when you do that, when you take, because think about it, even if you take $1,000 a year and put it in your kid's college fund, right? By the time they graduate, it's probably only going to be about $28,000, whatever it is, right? You can use that money as a kid to step out of that hood and become that. You remember we used to think about Cuba, Doctors Beyond Borders? These kids, they can take that step with their education, go and out in the world to get educated, bring that education back to their community and help build up their community. But we don't do that, heck, because we're taught that drinking 2 Pepsis a day is better than leaving insurance money for the next generation, bro.
Two quantitative factors that are being left out. You bring up the soda, right? The soda is a symptom of consumerism.
Right.
Consumerism is a symptom of capitalism, right?
Capitalism.
The difference between the example that you gave, which was a valid example, I'm not trying to discredit your example whatsoever, right? The difference between the two, with the example you brought up and the Cuba example, is the fact that Cuba, its education is free. You
Right.
don't got to pay for education in Cuba,
Right.
right? Now, if we had more programs like that available for people that are in the inner cities, how much would things change, right? The link to criminality is there's one reason that causes crimes, and that's poverty. When
Poverty.
people are in impoverished conditions and they're just left to just fend for themselves and they got to do whatever they can to survive, that's because of poverty and the conditions, the material conditions they were born into. Now,
Right.
if we had more free after school programs, if we had more free trade schools, if we had more free educational programs just in general, a lot of the crime will dip and just probably disappear. You may have a fraction of the community, one or two people, some outliers that may try to still get a buck however they could get a buck. Cool. But that outlier shouldn't be the cause for the main community not to have access to certain programs that can benefit them for the long term.
I got you.
You know, and that's the stark difference. Yes, what that example you gave was perfect, on point. Yes, if you put the money away for a kid every year, you know, so that college fund comes, they got money for college, they got money to have in their pocket. But if college is free, if they have access to college now, that $1,000 you were saving up every year, Freezie, you could use that money to reinvest into your community. You ever heard of the term of the velocity of a dollar?
Yeah.
What it is if I spend $20 at your business, you could take that $20, 15 of that, and spend it in another business. 10 of that will go to your worker. 3 of that will go to your babysitter. It creates more jobs, the more money that you put into the economy. Now, your most conservative economic philosopher would tell you the same exact thing. They may hate welfare, right? They may despise welfare, but what they understand is that welfare, it drives the economy because you're putting more money back into the economy that was before.
Right. No, I get it. I get that part. I get that part.
Think of it like this, and the Bronx, right? Like, you know, Pelham Park, where my mom lives, right? Projects and everything. If that entire neighborhood, right? If welfare was taken away from that entire neighborhood, how long do you think that bodega is going to stay open?
Not long.
What?
Not long. Heck, you disappeared. Okay, so it appears that Heck disappeared.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah. So Heck disappeared. Salute to the chat. I love Wise is in the building. Wilson Ding, I see you, boss. Hewlett Samuel is in the building. Soulfinger 121212 is in the building. Wiz is in the building. What's good, man? I see y'all. I see y'all. I see y'all out here, man. Thank y'all for rocking with us.
Sorry about that, Freeze.
Ain't not. You know, I get what you're saying. But here's the thing. I saw a study on mice, right? I saw a study on mice. And what happens is there were 2 set of mice right next to each other. There were mice that had to go through a maze in order to get cheese. And then there was right next to them, there was zero maze. It was wide open. And then every day the cheese was just dropped in there and the rats ate. It was a rats, I guess, not mice. Mice, one of them. Mice, some type of rodent. There's mice. Let's call them mice. The part where the mice had to find their way through a maze in order to get cheese, they wound up being happy and healthy. The part where it was just a wide open area with no maze and they just dropped cheese in there every day, the mice got fat and then they started killing each other. Right? Basically what the behavior was when you gave this one section of the same animal, right? When you gave it to them for free, they became apathetic, despondent, and violent, right? But the ones on the other side that had to work, right? They were healthy. They were engaged. They were stimulated. They were, so they wound up being healthy. They didn't fight. They got along. And so when I saw that study, I'm thinking like, okay, is this a behavioral thing, right? When you give people stuff and they don't have to work for it, do they, as a byproduct of assistance, become apathetic, despondent, and eventually violent? Is it the same thing in humans?
right? Which leads to fascism, which leads to violence, right? That's what happens with scarcity, right? So if you have a box of mice that have no maze in it, but you're just putting one piece of cheese in there and you're feeding them every day, that one piece of cheese, it becomes scarce because the population starts to grow. So that's why
Right.
you get violent tendencies and stuff like that.
Right.
Now, if you have a population, and what I'm advocating for is just universal health care, universal college, free at, at the point of entry,
Universal
um,
education.
universal education, and I believe in I believe in decommodifying the housing market, right? Which means that we should have 60% ownership of the housing market should be public, 40% should be private. That way, the private, it can't overpower the public and change the course when it comes to rent, when it comes to housing costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, with the study that you gave, I'm not familiar with the study, so I can't speak on it, or I can only take your word for it. So I'm just trying to gauge what's the comparison between that study and the conversation what happened right now. Do you think that if we give access to universal health care, universal college education, and all that, people will become more violent and a violent tendency? I'm just trying to figure out the correlation.
No. What I was getting at is this: when okay, or let me rephrase. First of all, I agree with and listen, it, I think you're probably extreme, but not as extreme as I am, right? Because I realize there should also be a universal death benefit, right? There is at $255. Can you bury someone for $255? No.
You go into sign some papers, that's $300 off the back
Right,
at the
right,
funeral home.
right. My thing is certain things that are privatized, like burial services.
Mm-hmm.
That's privatized. I think that should be public. I think there should be public places set aside. Man, listen, you passed away. You already did your debt to society. You had a lot. Now you have to pay for the plot of. Think about this. You have to buy the place where you're buried, bro, or rent it. Not even rent it, but you got to pay a certain. You know what I'm saying? Like when we die, we have to buy that land for our eternal resting spot, right?
I think that is a weird practice that we do. I honestly do. I love my family to death, but I tell them right now, if I pass away, just cremate me, put me in some ashes, and just take my ashes to Puerto Rico, put it in the sand. That's all I want.
You're right. Ashes to ashes, dust to dust.
Point
Right,
blank.
right. But the thing about it is even now, the crematory is going to charge a family what $1,800. You know what I'm saying? So even that, the government don't even pay $1,800 for that. I think the burial services part, the health part, and the birth part should all be free. When you're a woman and you're pregnant, you should not have to pay for the fact that you're bringing a child in. Certain things are just right. Certain things that we pay for is just ridiculous, bro.
To give birth to a newborn baby in the United States in 2023, what's the dollar figure? Do you know?
Ooh, I think at a minimum, I think it's like $38,000, $40,000. Yeah.
$78,000 to give birth to one human being.
Right. Wow.
$78,000.
That's crazy, bro.
$78,000.
That's crazy, right? 78,000. Now here's the
You know
thing.
how much it costs in Canada to give birth?
No. Oh, it's free.
Break it down, the costs and stuff like that to pay the doctors to work, less than $10,000.
Bro. Bro. Listen, man. I'm with you. That's why I'm telling you that certain things that we pay for is ridiculous, bro. Why are we paying?
We got to pay for water. You need that to live, Freezie. You
I
need that to live.
I know, bro. I know this.
There's places in the United States right now in 2023, 74% of indigenous reservations, they do not have access to clean water.
To clean water, bro.
In 2023, 87% of HBCUs in the United States do not have access to high-speed internet.
Right.
How is that a thing in 2023?
Right. Right. These are the things. These are the things, bro, that are part of the trappings and the failures of a system that is hijacked by capitalism. Right? Capitalists don't see um um a profit in that. So what? That's what they say. That's what they don't have they don't have high speed internet, but they have internet, right? Right? That's the thing. The thought, why should I invest? Why should I invest in a group that's not gonna reinvest in us?
Can you name me an innovation that capitalism has produced in 2023? Can you name me one innovation?
No. No, I can't name one. I can't name one in the past 5 years, to be honest.
Over the past 50 years, right? Can you all the past 100? Can you name me any technological advancement that was a byproduct of capitalism?
No.
You look at cell phones, right? People love to bring up cell phones. Socialists, you don't want cell phones, da da da. The reason why we have technology for the cell phones is because of the USSR in the 1980s, the United States of the Soviet Republic. That's why we have cell phones. The reason why we have the microprocessing computer chips for computers for the internet is because of the NASA space race that was publicly funded. The
Right.
reason why we have the internet is because the internet was publicly funded through a program through DARPA and the military. Same thing
Right.
with the GPS systems that we have and
Right.
everything like that.
Right. And yeah, and the internet, the internet part of it, and people forget the internet is only a connector. It's a network. That's what it is. It's not like computing power. All it is a network that connects one from another and one to another. And then hopefully you can do it fast and reliably, right? That's what the internet is, bro. It's not like a major thing. It's like the telephone. It's like the telephone.
The radio, FM, AM. Do you know why they stopped having TV shows and movies or just descriptions, audio descriptions on the radio? It's because the radio waves, they are publicly owned by the US citizens and the government. You
Right.
can't monopolize the radio waves.
You
That's
can't
why
man.
you don't pay a subscription for Hot 97. That's
Right.
why you don't pay a subscription for sports radio because the airwaves are owned by the people. Now,
Right.
as technology advanced and we got TVs, TV waves are privately owned.
Right.
That's why we pay for cable subscriptions. That's why we
Right.
have to pay for our Netflix subscription because those radio waves that transfer the data are not publicly owned.
Right. 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 Capitalism. Capitalism, bro. It's one of those things where I and sometimes I get frustrated by the big bad wolf, and then I also get frustrated by the three little pigs, right? My thing with the big bad wolf is we know the big bad wolf is the big bad wolf, right? Right. You know he got fangs, you know he like eating pigs and all of that stuff, right? But if you're the pigs and you know the big bad wolf exists, right? Why don't you fight back? Right. I just that's the part. That's why
They
I'm
have
saying, bro.
the big bad wolves, they have access to drone capability, Freezy. That's why we can't fight back,
Right.
right? And you bring up policing, and I'm gonna just touch on it just a little bit when it comes to policing, right? I look at the job of being a police officer,
Right.
and I know some people, I have family members that are cops. I worked
It's
in
tough, bro.
EMS for 10 years and stuff. This is how I look at it. Police officers, they are class traitors, right? Because when you look at it, when protests needs to be breaking up, who breaks up the protests? The police officers. When union workers are striking for better wages, who breaks up the union meetings? The police officers. The National Guard, the first time the National Guard was used in the United States at the end of the 19th century going into the 20th century, it was used in a town in West Virginia because a railroad company, their workers were striking. So what happened? The National Guard came in to destroy that strike. so the workers can't have better wages.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the reason why you have military at a state level. You should not have military at a state level, bro. That's another one of those things where, and understand just
At the
in
state
case.
level, it's police officers are military at the state level.
Yeah. Yeah. They're military. Yeah. Yeah. No, no, I get all of that. You know what I'm saying? What I'm saying is, and I think we may view safety differently depending on who you are as a U.S. citizen, right? Like myself, I'm a U.S. citizen. I'm an Army vet. All these type of things, right? But when I still when I see the police and the National Guard, I don't look at them as friends, right? I look at them as foes, and I shouldn't. But I'm conditioned to be that, right? I'm conditioned to think that type of way. Like from what I see on my television, my interactions in the neighborhood. I mean, bro, some of the stuff I saw growing up, I'm conditioned to have a healthy adversarial relationship, not do anything to the police, just not trust them, is what I'm saying. Right?
Stuff.
Listen, I want police. Man, listen, I used to work in law enforcement, bro. You know what I'm saying? I used to work in law enforcement, and I hope all law enforcement officers that are doing the right thing have long, successful careers. I hope they stay healthy, and I hope their families and everybody stay healthy, and all of that stuff. I wish them well, right? But based on my experiences, bro, I just don't have a healthy. Um, the word I'm looking for is kind of like relationship with them. Heck, you know what I really wanted to get it on with you about, talk to you about, is not just the big bad wolf and not just the three little pigs, but the legal system and how capitalists use the legal system to enforce and reinforce their dominance against the three little pigs.
It's the government, and that's the thing. The government, it's a tool, right? It could be used in either way. It could be used to benefit the people, or it could be used to benefit the 1% that own all the capital in the society that we live in. Right now, it's at the other part of it where it aligns more with capitalists and their ideology, not more than the people, right? When you look at the president that's in power right now, Mr. Joe Biden himself, he was the one that when the railroad workers were protesting in December for better wages, he was the one that broke up that protest. He is the one that he is trying to stop the protest from the UPS workers that are trying to go on strike right now. Right.
Right,
Same thing with Donald Trump. Did the same thing for teachers, did the same thing for railroad workers, same thing that Obama did, same thing that Bush did. These are all byproducts. They serve one machine and one machine only. And it's the capitalists that own society that we live in. It's not one big bad person or a cabal of people or a private operation owned by one religious group. No, it's
right,
capitalists that want to control the world for one reason and one reason only, for their profits.
right, right. That's not new. That's old.
That's been the day of time ever since the day of time began. Like I
Right,
said, look at the church back in the days. Look at the lords and serfs. Everything was just a different version, but now it's just reformed and revamped.
right. Given
We
new
got
names.
we got in Kentucky, legislation was just passed in Kentucky that allows kids that are under the age of 15 to work at a slaughterhouse, being a porter in Kentucky.
Right,
We got child labor going on in the United States in 2023, and nobody gives a damn.
right, right. And the reason, in my opinion, the reason for that is because the three little pigs are apathetic, right?
Wages.
Because bro, when we go to city council meetings, I don't know if y'all go to city council meetings or not, right? Or county council meetings and all that stuff. But the stuff, the rhetoric, the stuff that you hear in these city council meetings, bro, if you don't go to city council or county council, and if you're in a big city, you probably have
I
aldermen.
could just imagine how crazy that fucking sideshow that you go to is in South Carolina, bro. I could just imagine.
Bro, what it is what it is um the powerful people, and this is this
No bodega Wi-Fi. We're not going to see that trash ass movie, The Sound of Freedom.
yo, yeah, but the thing is in places that are not so urban, you don't necessarily get the charismatic, rich speaker. Like in the big city, if you're charismatic and if you can move people, you can elevate through politics if you're charismatic, right? See, in other places though, it don't matter how charismatic you are. I mean, oh, it don't matter how rich you are. If you are charismatic, people see you. They trust you, bro. They'll back you in places like South Carolina, right? Like if you legit can move the crowd, if you're a chief rocker, people will follow you, right? Is what I noticed is in places where there is economic booming, bro, people you never even heard of elevate through the ranks, and the next thing you know, they're on C-SPAN talking, and you're like, I never even heard of this person, and this person clearly is the white lady. What's the white lady that's always getting in trouble in Congress, in the Senate? I'm sorry.
Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah. How, bro? How does this happen? I know this. I know this.
This is why. That is why that she gets to go on Congress and talk about Jewish space lasers, and she gets no criticism for it. She
Right.
spews so much conspiratorial nonsense, it's ridiculous. But I'm gonna digress from that. But no, I agree with you, Freezie. It's I'm gonna say you got to be able to shock the system, right? And we're not gonna be able to shock the system because we have too many people being divided without understanding what's the real reason that we should all come together, right? It
Right.
shouldn't matter if anyone, your race, your gender, your sexual orientation, however you want to identify in society, that shouldn't be an issue. But because we live in a society that's been dominated by white supremacy and by the patriarchy and capitalism,
And
this is why
redlining.
we live in a society that we live in. Yeah, and redlining and
Yeah.
everything else, and
Right.
Jim Crow laws and the black code that was put in place in the early 1900s and late 1800s. All of that was put into place to stifle the economic advancement of those that were just previously free. Why was it
And
that
and
when
give it the advantage and give the advantage to white people.
for every slave that a plantation owner freed, he got money for it?
Right.
Why was that?
Reparations.
But the people that were taken advantage of for generations and generations and generations, they never got a penny.
Right. 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 Not only were they not allowed, but things were stripped away, taken away from them. So they were pushed back. So people have certain groups of people, whether they realize it or not, white privilege is a byproduct of that. And white privilege does exist, right? White privilege does exist. It's the reason why, and I'm not saying that white people are racist. That's not what I'm saying. And I'm not saying that white people can't do it on their own, because they are. I know many talented white people, bro. Many of them, right?
Bodega Wi-Fi, you my guy, my guy. But what you just put in the comment section, it makes no sense. So they shouldn't learn that at 6 years. Should they learn about what ADHD is at 6 years old? Should they learn about what autism is at 6 years old?
Yeah. Yeah. You want to touch on that
Makes
for
no
a little
sense
bit?
to me. Go ahead.
No, I asked you.
Since the lockdown, gender dysphoria has not increased by 70%. I need a source for that. If you want to bring that up, you can source that. This whole idea of transgenderism, this is not something that's new. in society. This is something that's been around forever. Freezie, if me and you was to go on a plane right now, and if we was to go to the country of India, India has a legally recognized third gender. Are you going to tell people in India that they're fucking stupid?
Right. Right.
To the Samoa, are you going to go to Samoa and tell them that the concept of fafafine doesn't exist because it's out of your social cues?
Right. Right.
No.
Okay. You know, my thing is with this conversation, right? I'm uncomfortable with it. And the reason why I'm uncomfortable with it is not because, you know, I want to be on one side of the other, but I think I have a clear lack of reliable information, and I think there are emotional arguments being made that sometimes may cloud the argument on either side.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? If you're asking me how I believe, um, my thing is let people live. Right. That's my stance on it. That's my stance on every topic that we talk about, whether it's economics, whether it's race, whether it's sex. It's always let people live, man. Let people, you know what I'm saying? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is my thing, right?
Yeah.
My thing is though, I get bombarded with emotional arguments from every side, and I don't know what to take in, like what is real and what is false. You know what I'm saying?
I listen to the experts, right? I'm not a neuroscience expert, right? But the experts in that field, they have talked about this and they lean with me on this conversation, right? So if you want to have a conversation, you could just look up what the Endocrinologic Society believes, what the American Pediatric Society believes, what the Psychiatrics Society of America believes, what the HOH believes, what the WUH believes. You could just look at all the experts and see what they believe on the situation.
Okay. Okay. Why is this so important? I'm sorry, say it again.
No, I couldn't hear you. What you said, you broke up.
I'm saying, so why is this topic so important?
I feel that in society, if we are going to advocate for the advancement in society, we need to advocate for those that are the most vulnerable in society. And in society that we live in right now in 2023, it's indigenous folks, it's members of the BIPOC community, it's queer people, it's trans people. Those are the most people that are affected in the society we live in right now in 2023. So if we want to advance anything, like if I'm going to talk about I want to help uplift Puerto Rico. I'm not just going to talk about a certain amount of Puerto Ricans. I'm going to talk about all Puerto Ricans.
Right.
I'm going to talk about everyone. I'm not going to pick and choose which Puerto Ricans I talk about. No, I'm talking about the whole island, everything that encompasses that whole island and people that fall under that umbrella.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, like helping all people. Right. For example, my stance is
Like I'm my fault, Freeze. Let me just add one thing. Like we've had this conversation about, oh heck, let's have this convo and let's talk about this. And I always tell you, Freezy, like Freezy, I feel uncomfortable talking about certain issues because I'm not affected directly by those issues. Right.
right.
If you want to have a conversation about capitalism, we could talk about that because I'm from Puerto Rico and we're being affected by it. But
Right.
if you want to talk about the Black experience in America, I'm not the best person to have that conversation with. Evergreen is the best person to have that conversation with. You are the best person to have that conversation with, right? Ally Wise may be the perfect person to have that conversation with. Bodega Wi-Fi, not me. I can't speak on the Black experience in
I don't
America.
think I don't think that's true. I think that's false. Right. And here's the reason why I'll say that's false. Right. The Black experience and any conversation centered around the Black experience can't solely be based off of one person's um, perspective, right? In any scientific experiment, in any debate, you have to have a control. And I'm not saying us versus them, but I'm saying comparatively, right? So when you talk about the Black experience, You talk about the Black experience compared to others that have the same American experience. That way, you know whether the Black experience have done good things, have experienced good things, or not so fair things. The reason why we can speak to slavery as Blacks, we speak about slavery is because Blacks were enslaved and others were not, right? So if everybody was enslaved, if it was like Blacks, whites, and everybody else across the board, when I talk about the Black experience, it wouldn't necessarily be the same because everybody was enslaved. You feel me? And I know that sounds random, and I don't mean for it to be random. What I'm saying is in any conversation or debate, you want to bring all the smart minds, all the educated minds, and it doesn't have to be formal education. It could be personal education, personal research, and things that make you a subject matter expert, right? You want to bring all the educated minds to the table so that you can speak to certain things, right? Get others' opinion on it and take it back to your Black experience, compare it, right? And then say, okay, now I understand why there's a Puerto Rican Day parade, right? Now I understand. Well, because I'll give you an example. I give you an example, right? Somebody told me, I don't know what them Spanish people talk about. They just a mix of Africans and Spanish people, right? That's what somebody told me one time. And I'm sorry, sorry if that sounds offensive to people. I don't mean for that to be offensive. The reason why I was offended by it is because I respect people's culture. Like I think it's more than just like what you mentioned. You remember blood? Remember we was talking about blood? I told you I was from Nigeria, and we're talking about it. I respect where people are from. Like I understand my Black people in New York are culturally different than my Black people down south, right? Even though their blood, their lineage might come from the same place, we are different, right? And so that's why when people say, even my white guys want to talk about when my white guys want to talk about the sounds of Blackness, I'll talk to them, bro. They're like, yo, why do Black people like such and such? Why people always get so mad when, when you say such, when white people say such and such? And I'll explain all these things to them because in order for everyone to understand the sounds of Blackness, right, and to have these conversations, especially for and here's the other thing, and I'm trying to be better at this. Heck, I'm trying to be better at calling everybody Spanish because I know everybody's not Spanish, right? But then I don't really understand the difference between Latin, Hispanic, and Spanish.
Spanish as people that are from Spain. I'm not Spanish. I'm not from Spain.
Right, right,
I'm not. I don't say. Latino is people that speak colonizers' language, whether that be Spain, whether that be France. So technically, people that live in Haiti are Latinos
Latino,
because they
right,
speak colonizers' language, right?
right,
Technically, right. So when it comes to his like being Spanish, I wouldn't identify myself as Spanish because I'm not from Spain. I'm from Puerto Rico. Yo soy Borican, right? So I'm more aligned to my indigenous identity of being Boricuan or being Arawakan, which is the Taino, where the Tainos come from. They're off-breed of the Arawaks. So that's more where I align with.
okay,
When you look at the Caribbean, when you look at Cuba, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti, those four places have more in common with Jamaica, Barbados, and the rest of those islands off of the Antigues than we do with people in South America.
right,
Culturally, people from Puerto Rico and culturally, people from South America, like Mexico or Guatemala, we aren't similar. We're more
right,
in line with those that are in the Caribbean.
okay, right. My thing is, my thing to that is, that's tough to distinguish if you're just an average Joe like myself. Like if you're not from the Caribbean, bro, that's a lot of stuff to unpack. Especially when
That's where it started. That's where the whole transatlantic slave started. It started in the Caribbean. It started, like I told you, on the island of Kikikau, which is now DR and Haiti.
Right.
That's where it started. That's where Columbus first landed. That's where, if you want to talk about sex trafficking, that was the first sex trafficker in the America. Columbus, bringing back indigenous children to Europe to use as sex slaves.
Okay. Okay. No, I get that part, bro.
There's a movie that's out, Freezie, that you should see. I think I sent it to you. It's Exterminate All the Brutes, and there's another one that's called Even the Rain. Right, Even the Rain is a depiction. It's the most factual recreation that you will have of the Tainos from the Caribbean meeting Columbus and those off of the boat. It's the most accurate to history, to their
Okay.
first encounter. It's on Netflix. It's called Even the Rain.
Okay. I'll check it out. I'm gonna check it out.
Check it out. I'm
Yeah,
trigger
man.
warning. It's very heavy. It's very heavy, because you got two subplots that's going. It's the people that are in the documentary, in the documentary, but at the same time, they are protesting the government not giving them access to clean water. So there's two
Okay.
stories going on, and it's very
Okay.
similar from what it was back then to what it is right now.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, man. I'm 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 in a weird spot with it, because when I see a lot of my people from the Caribbean, they look black like us, bro. And I know you can't just go
From
off
the
looks, bro.
But I said, hold on, I sent you that video of those from Mexico.
Right?
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When people talk about Mexican, is the people that I send you, are those in the conversations of Mexicans?
Yes. They gotta be, right?
When someone tells you, what do you think of, who do you see when you hear the word Mexican? Are the people that you see that I sent you in that video those that
No, they don't look Mexican. But commercial images and people can be two different things, right? And it's like, for instance, I'll give you an example. My black women, our black women, go for this type. They go for this look, right? It's a Northern African look, bro. Like wavy, luscious hair, big ass butterfly eyebrows. You know what I'm saying? Long, all these things. Everybody looks like, yeah, they look like they take on this look like everybody's from Tunisia, right? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about, the light Africans, the ones with the hair and the funny color eyes and the eyebrows. Bro, most black women don't look like that, bro. Most of our black women are African. They cocoa brown and we love them, right? They mahogany and we love them, right? They mocha
to
and
your
we love them.
when it comes to your phenotypic shade, the closer you are to the equator, the darker you're going to be.
Right.
Right. So that's why when you look at indigenous tribes from like Alaska and from Canada, they're not as dark as those from South America or from Mexico or from Texas. Right. So it's the closer you are to the equator, the darker your phenotypic skin texture is going to be.
No, I understand the basics. What I'm telling you though is that commercially, the people in charge of the media that puts black women out there only show a certain look of black women, right? Whereas that might be like 5% of what black women look like, but the other 95% look like everyday, beautiful, gorgeous black women, right? And the thing with the Mexican
Beauty
thing,
standards.
yeah, yeah, like the thing you sent me about the Mexicans. Yeah, I understand what Mexicans look like, bro. You know what I'm saying? The mainstream Mexicans, most of them, you know what I'm saying, from what you see. But the thing is when the video that you sent me, it didn't dawn on me that Mexicans could look that way because of what the 5% of the Mexicans that we see. And then even with that said, even the Mexicans I come across in daily life, I don't look at them or interact with them enough to even understand that they come in. All I hear is when they get together, they're speaking Spanish. That's it. That's my interaction.
You got the lady that was in Black Panther, Lupita Nyong'o. She's
Yeah.
Mexican. She's from
Who?
Mexico.
Who?
Lupita Nyong'o, who was in Black Panther.
Who was that? What character?
Okay, it was, if you saw Black Panther 1, T'Challa's love interest, who he had a child with, in the second one.
She's Mexican? I had no idea, bro. That's crazy.
It's not first. No, she's like fifth generation Mexican.
Get out of here.
Do you know why? Do you know why that happened?
Uh-uh.
Because when when the East in the United States started expanding to the West,
Right.
when slaves were rebelling in the South, they were fleeing to Mexico. The president in Mexico at the time made slavery illegal. First, it was Haiti who abolished slavery and made it illegal, and then it was Mexico who said no slave catchers are allowed in Mexico. If you're in Mexico, we will kill you no matter what.
Right. Wow, I didn't know that. That's an amazing fact, bro. That's what they call a gem, right? I had no idea.
Yes.
And so it goes to my point. And listen, I know I'm sounding disrespectful. I don't want to sound disrespectful.
The president's name was Vicente Guerrero, who said it. I was trying to think of his name. Go ahead, bro.
Okay. So my thing is I don't want to sound disrespectful in my ignorance. What I'm claiming is innocent ignorance when I ask these things, right? Not that I'm doing this intentionally, but in order for me to get smarter and improve myself and the world at the same time, I have to ask these basic level questions in order to build upon the conversation and not just spew rhetoric that I heard or learned in a book, but learn these things and their practicality so that I can improve my knowledge base and help spread the truth. Right. My thing is for a lot of like for instance, let me ask you this, and I know this might be touchy, and vibes says if you're listening to this, don't take this as a shot or me sounding like I mentioned racist or anything, right? But heck, when you see black males, what do you think? Do you just think black, or do you think, hey, I wonder what part of Africa he from?
And to think like that. So growing up, if I see some of my friends in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, I grow up thinking that they're African American. That's how we were conditioned to believe. We're not conditioned to believe that my friend may have had family from generations and generations from back then. Like it's all a part of our decolonizing, right? We all have to decolonize our mind. And however, whichever journey that is, it's the journey. But there's a lot of dangers on the internet, because the internet is a beautiful thing to have, but it's a curse at the same
It's a
time,
curse at the
because
same time, bro.
you have so many rabbit holes that people fall down. And I'm gonna tell you this: when I first started my journey, when it comes to being where I am right now, I fell down conspiratorial holes. That's why I fell down the 9/11 conspiracy, the John F. Kennedy, the Kennedy assassination. I fell down all those conspiracy theories, but I had to go through that in order to get to where I'm at right now. Because you got to be able to digest the information from both sides. That way you can come to a conclusion on what's bullshit and what's reality for yourself.
Give me a split second, bro. I just gotta do something.
No problem. No problem. Bodega Wi-Fi. Dane Calloway teaching blacks on indigenous. When you mean indigenous to America, what do you mean by that? Indigenous to America, because they already had people who are indigenous to this land that we call Turtle Island. There was already different tribes that were already here before anyone else. The concept of owning property, of owning land, that's a Western concept. So indigenous tribes that were in the Americas already, they're not going to have titles and deeds to land, because they never went off of that. That wasn't a part of their society. That's a Western concept. So I just want to know, Bodega, what are you talking about when you bring that up? Shout out to Allah Wise in the chat. He said Columbus was Spanish. Heck would never be Spanish. That's a fact, my guy. That web on. As Brooklyn in the chat, we have lost compassion in this country to let people be who they are. Don't demonize them because you don't understand them. Absolutely, and it's not just this
Right.
country; it's just the world we live in. Like to demonize the those that we don't understand or the
Right.
other.
Right. Right. Well, bro. I have one of these days. We'll have like one of these days. I want to have the talk with everybody about world history, like world history, and not just as simple as um and basically what I'm getting at is I think what happens is we go back to the middle of history, human history, and not to the very beginning of human history, like with some stuff, right? Like I think some we jump into conversation, we jump in the conversation of at the point where people were already separate, right? Where there were already um countries and borders already set, where there were tribes already set, right? But I think there is a place like you can go back to all the way back to for those that believe in stuff like Cain and Abel, where two brothers had two different belief systems. One brother believed in sharing everything with the world and improving the world, and the other was a capitalist, right? The other was like, I'm only going to share a certain amount, but I'm going to put up borders and all this stuff, and I'm going to mark my stuff off and keep people out of my section. There was that brother, and that brother killed the one that believed in sharing with everybody. You know what I'm saying? So it's a bunch
Like
of it's a bunch of stuff.
honestly, Freezy, if you take a step back and look at history as it's presented in front of you, and you start looking at it, it will make you think that somewhere down the line, some white supremacist in the future got in a time machine and went back in time and changed history. That's the only way you could explain all of this foolery. That
Right,
some racist in the future took
right,
a time machine, went back in time, gave someone the manuscript to be where we're at right now. That's the only way you could explain this fucking foolery that we're living in.
right.
That's the only way. And
Right.
even with the
A
concept,
capitalist, a capitalist.
yeah, capital, yeah. But even with the concept of communism, right? When you look at the works of Karl Marx, right, and Frederick Engels, and those that came up with what we consider as communism, even that is a bastardized version of just indigenous living, right? When you
Right,
read Karl Marx's work, he credits everything that he has built or he has written by just observing how indigenous people lived. It's
right,
all communal living. That's
right,
all what communism is. It's just communal living, what our ancestors used to do back in the days. That's basically just all it is.
right, right. But then there. Okay, so okay.
You said
How
that.
do
I
you
ain't say
feel?
that.
How do you feel about talent and drive and motivation? Okay, so I know I shouldn't. I humbly feel this way, right?
I'm good for like 15 more minutes just because
I was gonna
I
say,
gotta
nah.
dip
I
out.
want to wrap.
It's
I
a
want to
great
wrap it.
it's a great convo that we have in Freeze. I just want to let you know when me and you we could talk for hours, bro. You know that, Unc.
Yo, we had 2 hours, bro.
I didn't even realize that.
I'm trying to wrap up right now. I'm trying.
All right, so whenever you want to wrap it up, Freezy, we can
Hey,
wrap it
hey,
up.
how about we do this? How about we put a pin
Go
in
ahead.
this right here,
Mm-hmm.
and then we'll make a promise to each other that in sometime in the future, we don't. I don't want to give a date because I know you're busy, and then you understand the stuff that I'm going through. That we'll circle back and touch on this. It'll be closed panel, just you and I, and we'll just touch on this. That way, I can tap your brain on some other stuff. And since you have a sense on how the conversation goes,
Panel, let Bodega Wi-Fi jump in here. He want to be in the chat, talk to
he
your
want to be in
man.
it.
Shout out my
Yeah,
guy Bodega Wi-Fi. Trust me, bro. I'm here with you, baby.
yeah, man, yeah, man. Um, um, yeah. So what we'll do is we'll wrap right here, bro, and then we'll make a promise to each other that at some point, you know, what I'm saying, we'll circle back around and we'll continue this conversation. Maybe Maybe on a
Bodega, I
holiday
used to
weekend or
be
something.
just like you, Bodega. Just know that, Bodega. I used to be just like you until I was able to decolonize my mind.
Right, right, right. All right. No lie, no lie. Man, thank you for giving me a couple of hours, bro.
Of course, I just want to leave it at this. Everything that I'm saying, if you guys want to take a deeper dive into what I'm saying, look up scholars that are in the field, right? So if you want to talk about labor rights and labor or just people's rights, look up the works of Fred Hampton. Look up the works of Angela Davis. Look up the
Right.
works of Kwame Ture. Look up the works of Dr. Richard Spice right now, who's out right now on Democracy at Work. You'll be able to have these conversations, take a deep dive of what capitalism is. Richard Wolff, I should say.
Right. Well, at the moment, I can't because I'm taking courses on how to be a better capitalist. But once
People in
I,
the chat,
yeah,
better capitalist.
yeah, you know what I'm saying. I'm working on some broker stuff. So once I get past that, then I'll do that, and then that way we can have a more enlightened conversation. You won't have to carry me in a conversation because next time we get together, I'll bring more stuff to the table.
I'll send you some more Tiki Talks. All right, I'll send you some more Cliff Notes. All right, baby.
Bem, Bem. Again,
Bim.
there it is. That's Project Nerd HQ. That's Heck. From Morning Brew Sports. Him and the guys are great. When the next time y'all coming on?
Well, I do Yankees Morning Brew every Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 11 o'clock in the morning
Y'all in
on
last
Morning
place,
Brew
right?
Sports. Yeah, we in last place right now, just like your Mets are. I saw that little stab. You
Yeah,
just try to give. Yeah, you just try to give that. You did. You really did.
yeah.
But yeah.
Except we spend more money to be in last place, though.
Yeah, that's a fact. That's a fact. Also, I work with NYY News TV, which is the #1 Yankees watch along channel. My guy Pete Seminetti kills it with the Yankees watch along. He's averages anywhere from 6 to 8 to 10,000 viewers per watch along. He covers every Yankee game. So I work with both Morning Brew Sports and NYY News TV. Shout out to Bodega Wi-Fi, Ally Wise, everybody that was in the chat who pulled up. Appreciate all y'all. And
Yeah, man.
most certainly, I appreciate you, Uncle Freezie. Like I
No
said,
doubt.
I'm gonna keep on giving you your flowers every time we on a panel together, no matter
I
how
appreciate it, bro.
annoying it gets. If it wasn't for you, Freezie, I wouldn't be what I'm doing right now.
Hey, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate you, bro.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that takes talent. Like you got to have talent and drive and motivation to be the better version of yourself than you were yesterday. And everybody's not committed to that. Everybody's not committed to being the better version. When those rose petals separate in the morning to get that sunlight, are you taking all of that stuff in to be the best looking flower that you can be? Or just gonna keep your petals closed and just sit there and just being a flower is good enough. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, man. Yeah, man. So thank y'all for watching, man. We're gonna get out of here. Peace, y'all.